Father, what is this? Han Qinger asked nervously. This was the first time she had encountered such a situation. She was extremely nervous. Hanju said, "Go out and wait." With that, he stepped into the black vortex and activated the supreme treasure on his body. When that hand appeared just now, Hanju had already seen the other party's cultivation. Late-stage Great Tao Primordial Chaos Realm. Hanju focused his attention to prevent the other party from entering the third Tao field from the black vortex. He stepped out of the black vortex and saw a dilapidated void. Lightning interrove, and a majestic stone tablet appeared in front of him. It was covered in caves, and terrifying things surged in them. The 5 great divine punishers were tied to the top of the stone tablet by chains and could not move. Hanju immediately used the simulation trial to check his surroundings. Ancestor Shenin, perfected Great Tao Primordial Chaos Realm, chaotic life form, transcendent Tao expert, body of darkness. There was no stronger existence. That meant that Hanju didn't sense anything wrong. Hanju's gaze landed on the top of the stone tablet. A figure stood there. He wore a black robe and his hair was disheveled. His skin was dry like tree bark and his face was cold, like a demon that had crawled out of the netherworld. At this moment, Ancestor Shenyan's right arm was slowly recovering. The hand that was destroyed by Hanju was his hand. Ancestor Shenin stared at him in shock and asked in a low voice, "Who are you?" He glanced at Han Tua below. He didn't expect Han Tua to have such a background. Etienne roared excitedly, "Godfather! Save us!" Godfather? The other 3 divine punishers were shocked. The legendary divine might heavenly sage. Hanju activated all his supreme treasures, and the divine light was oppressive. In their opinion, his aura was even stronger and more stunning than the ultimate god of punishment. This scene shocked them. Hanju said, "Why did you capture my son?" Ancestor Shenin frowned and asked, "Who's your son? Tell me, I can let him go." Hanju could tell at a glance that these 5 were the 5 great divine punishers. He was on good terms with the ultimate god of punishment, and these people were all good friends of Han Tua. He naturally had to save them. "Let them all go." Treat it as a misunderstanding, Hanju said seriously. He left a trace of his will in the black vortex to prevent anyone from sneaking in. Ancestor Shenin laughed as if he had heard the funniest joke. He suddenly stared at him and said coldly, "Don't you find it ridiculous?" Hanju sighed and asked, "Did they offend you?" "No." "Then, what do you want?" "I naturally want their bodies." Ancestor Shenin raised his hands, and a strange black aura emitted from the countless holes in the stone tablet. At this moment, he discovered that Hanju was gone. He did not panic. Instead, the corners of his mouth curled up. Hanju appeared behind him and slashed with the primordial judgment sword. Black chi appeared out of thin air and wrapped around Ancestor Shenyan's body. The primordial judgment sword slashed down and the black aura dissipated. Ancestor Shenyan's body was slashed into 2. How can this be? Ancestor Shenyan's expression changed drastically in disbelief. At this moment, a powerful imprisonment power suppressed him, preventing him from moving. Even his soul could not escape. He was shocked to find that he could not mobilize the power of the Great Tao. Impossible! He was a perfected Great Tao sage. He was already a top-notch cultivator in the entire chaos. Who was his match other than those ancient divine spirits? A fiend celestial Dharma idol suddenly rose above Hanju's head and grabbed him with one hand, crushing him. Ancestor Shenin has developed hatred towards you. Current hatred points, stars. Hanju sensed his surroundings and didn't see Ancestor Shenin anymore. He had indeed crushed Ancestor Shenin to death just now. In other words, this fellow had a life-saving method elsewhere. He clicked his tongue in wonder. How dare they be so arrogant with such strength? He thought that Ancestor Chenin had some special method, but he couldn't withstand a single blow. Hanju waved his sleeve and shattered the chains that locked the 5 divine punishers. He raised his hand and put the huge stone tablet into his sleeve, using his dermic powers to suppress it. He could sense that the stone tablet contained countless living beings. It should be a race, but this race was very strange and did not have any life. Etienne heaved a sigh of relief. The other 3 divine punishers looked at Hanju in reverence. Hanju said, "It's nothing. Leave as soon as possible." With that, he vanished. The distant black vortex shrank. A divine punisher looked at Han Tuo and sighed. "Boss, your father is really powerful. It's too easy." Ancestor Chenin, who brought them despair just now, was helpless in front of Hanju. It broadened his horizons. Yes, as expected of the divine might heavenly sage. It's said that the leader of the divine spirits and the divine might heavenly sage are joining forces to hold the chaotic assembly. Doesn't that mean that they are equals? This strength should indeed be equal. He can be the strongest in the chaos. Unfortunately, Godfather left too quickly. He hasn't acknowledged me yet. Han Tuo sighed. Actually, I didn't want to invite him. We have to be careful in the future. We were still careless previously and fell into that old fellow's trap. We actually hunted him for 10,000 years. It's ridiculous. The other 4 divine punisher cultivators also looked embarrassed. Etienne coughed. Back then, he was the one who said that he wanted to chase after him when he saw Ancestor Chenin escape. They chased for 10,000 years. Thinking back, it was indeed very silly. This place is not simple. Should we investigate? A divine punisher asked. Han Tuo scanned the surroundings and said, "Let's leave first and tell this to the leader of the divine spirits." The 4 divine punisher experts had no objections and quickly left with him. Inside the Taoist temple, Hanju sat down and the black vortex disappeared. Han Qinger came over and asked, "So fast? What happened just now?" She was hesitating if she should listen to her father and go out when he returned so quickly. How long had it been? Hanju said, "Your brother asked for help, so I went to help him." Han Qinger blinked and asked, "It's settled?" Did brother encounter an enemy or is he trapped? Both. What about the enemy? He's dead for the time being. What do you mean for the time being? I killed him, but he had a way to revive. Han Qinger was secretly shocked. He could be revived? It seemed that she had to be careful when facing enemies in the future. How could she confirm that the other party was really dead? Hanju said, "Go out and cultivate. Try to attain the Tao as soon as possible." Han Qinger nodded and couldn't help but ask, "Then, what's the enemy's cultivation level? Freedom Sage? Or stronger?" In her opinion, the enemy who could trap her brother was definitely a Freedom Sage. It was impossible for him to be weaker. "Stronger," Hanju said. Han Qinger frowned and left. Hanju was surprised. Why did this girl change her attitude? Shouldn't she be shocked? Sigh. His daughter was older and not as cute as when she was young. Hanju shook his head and laughed. He took out the huge stone tablet after Han Qinger left. Hanju stared at the stone tablet in his palm. The stone tablet became small under the supreme power's control. The dense holes were like countless black spots. It was very strange. His sage sense penetrated the stone tablet. The living beings in the stone tablet were like black worms. Their bodies were surrounded by black mist and looked like ghosts. These living beings did not have intelligence. They surged like ants. The largest of them should be the brood mother, constantly laying eggs. Hanju suddenly exclaimed in surprise. He discovered that the black aura on these black worms could actually devour his sage sense. Although this amount couldn't affect him, it was a fact that it had the ability. He was a great Tao Supreme. Who could stop it if the sage sense of the great Tao could be devoured? Most importantly, these black worms were still young and had yet to mature. He shivered. How terrifying would these black worms' power be if Ancestor Shinin nurtured them to a mature state? That was not right. Why would Ancestor Shinin bring this tablet to show off if they were so powerful? Hanju asked in his mind, I want to know the origins of this worm. 1 trillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? So expensive. It was already equivalent to the value of the leader of the divine spirits. Hanju immediately chose to continue. Turbidine World Destruction Worm, born at the beginning of the chaos. It was born from the primordial chaos as remnant will when the 7 supreme rules suppress the primordial chaos. It can devour magic power and senses. It will never grow up and can only be imprisoned in the stone tablet without the primordial chi. So impressive? Devour magic power and senses. It needed nebulous primordial chi to be nourished. No wonder Ancestor Shinin dared to bring them along. The turbidine world destruction worms might not be highly regarded by Ancestor Shinin, but this tablet was equivalent to a chaotic supreme treasure. Its surface was tightly sealed. A chaotic supreme treasure was equivalent to a great Tao supreme treasure. It was a supreme treasure that even a great Tao supreme wanted. Above that was the ultimate Tao treasure. It was a legendary treasure that all living beings in the chaos did not know of. Hanju returned to the main Tao field and placed the stone tablet in the primordial heavenly prison. It was invisible and formless, but it was fixed here and needed him to activate it personally. He wanted to use the primordial heavenly prison to enslave the turbidine world destruction worm. He didn't know if it was feasible. Hanju left a wisp of will to monitor and then returned to the third Tao field. He directly sent a dream to Ancestor Shinin and met him with his true body. In the dream, Ancestor Shinin opened his eyes. His expression instantly darkened when he saw Hanju. Although he was terrified, he could sense that this was a dream. Why should he be afraid, then? You took my treasure. This karma has been formed, Ancestor Shinin said coldly. Hanju asked curiously, do you not understand the current chaos? Do you know who you caught? Ancestor Shinin said coldly, isn't he your son? No. They're the 5 great divine punishers appointed by the leader of the divine spirits to supervise the great Tao divine spirits. Your sins are grave. The leader of the divine spirits will not let you go, Hanju said casually. He found it strange. This fellow was a top existence among the great Tao sages. Why was he so rash as if he didn't know anything about the chaos? Ancestor Shinin frowned. Who is the leader of the divine spirits? Ancestor Shinin hesitated. He wasn't stupid. Perhaps the chaos had already been overturned. Hanju's methods were already extraordinary. How strong was the leader of the divine spirits that he spoke of? Hanju asked, where are you from? Tell me. Ancestor Shinin sneered in his heart upon seeing that Hanju was not arrogant. It seemed that this fellow only had cultivation, but he was only a lackey of the leader of the divine spirits. He had no guts. Ancestor Shinin snorted. I've been suppressed at the bottom of the chaos for countless years. I just fought my way out not long ago. The bottom of the chaos again? Then, did this fellow know the ultimate god of punishment? Hanju wanted to ask, but he decided not to after thinking about it. Karma would form once ancestor Shinin said that he knew the ultimate god of punishment. The ultimate god would naturally know. It was best to kill him directly. 6-star hatred points was not so easy to resolve. Ancestor Shinin sneered upon seeing that he was silent. Hurry up and return my treasure. Hanju took out the primordial judgment sword and used the dark falling prison to turn the dream of the dark nightmare into reality, pulling Ancestor Shinin's body into the dream. In an instant, Ancestor Shinin seemed to sense something and his expression changed drastically. Hanju waved his sword and attacked with all his might. He didn't even need to use the Dharma Idol fusion technique. His own supreme power was enough to kill the other party. Ancestor Shinin was shocked. Sword Chi flashed and killed him before he could resist. The dream shattered. Hanju's will return to reality. He opened his eyes and checked his interpersonal relationships. Ancestor Shinin's portrait was no longer there. He was beyond dead. There were no surprises. Hanju wasn't an ordinary Great Tao Supreme. He could kill 25,000 foolish sword sages with his full strength. Ancestor Shinin had not reached the Great Tao Supreme realm. The bottom of the chaos, Hanju muttered to himself curiously. Then, he continued cultivating. The mid-stage of the Great Tao Supreme realm was not enough. The Tao Creator realm was his small goal. The Creator Lord realm was his long-term goal. Surpassing the Creator Lord realm was his ultimate goal. Circular stone platforms floated in the blue sky and white clouds. The 5 divine punishers stood in front of the ultimate god of punishment on the highest stone platform. The ultimate god of punishment sat on a crystal throne. Blood chi surged in the crystal, looking rather sinister. The ultimate god of punishment's right index finger tapped the armrest thoughtfully. Etion was impatient and couldn't help but ask, "Exalted God, that fellow's background is unknown. Such an expert appeared in the chaos and is still capturing chaotic fiend celestials. Could it be that life's forces are running rampant again?" He was furious upon thinking of Ancestor Shinin. It had been a long time since he felt so aggrieved. The ultimate god of punishment slowly said, "His name is Ancestor Shinin. He's from the bottom of the chaos." Han Tua, Etion, haven't you been to the bottom of the chaos? You know how terrifying it is. Han Tua and Etion's expressions changed drastically. Back then, it was a nightmare when they were suppressed at the bottom of the chaos by the primordial ancestor god. Although they survived, they were still cautious. At that time, there was a terrifying aura in all directions. They still trembled in fear even. Now, the ultimate god of punishment said, "Since the divine might heavenly sage has already taken action, I believe Ancestor Shinin can't live. This matter will end here. You're not allowed to step into the lowest level of the chaos before the chaos is strong enough." He had fought his way out from the bottom of the chaos and knew how terrifying that place was. He changed the topic and said, "I'll give you another mission now." Han Tua said, "Go ahead." The ultimate god of punishment narrowed his eyes and said, "I want you to investigate the ancient desolate and send back what you see and hear." Etion asked in surprise, "Can't you deduce it?" Han Tua and the other 3 divine punishers glared at him. The ultimate god of punishment chuckled. That Pangu severed the rules of karma. Most of the chaos can't even be considered a place, let alone the ancient desolate. I'm not going personally because I have something to consider. Dice cover new Tories at Bin Co. The 5 divine punishers looked at each other when the ultimate god mentioned Pangu. Pangu had already died several times. Unknowingly, he was no longer that powerful in the hearts of the living beings in the chaos. However, they did not expect Pangu to be able to sever karma, preventing even an existence like the leader of the divine spirits from spying on the chaos. What a terrifying Pangu! All right, you can leave. The ultimate god of punishment waved his hand. The 5 divine punishers bowed and quickly left. The world fell silent. The ultimate god of punishment meditated and cultivated. As he began to cultivate, a wisp of black aura appeared between his brows, making his face look very strange. Ancestor Shenyan's death did not cause a stir in the chaos because he was unknown. All the worlds hidden in the past appeared and began to recruit geniuses to fight for domains, resources, and providence. The most lively was the chaotic domain where the heavenly Tao was located. The heavenly Tao was the first world with perfect rules. Before this, the world was only tangible, but there was nothing special. The heavenly Tao's uniqueness made the worlds near it very prosperous. Tens of thousands of Taoists meditated in a grand palace in the 3 pure sacred world. They faced a direction, and 2 Taoists with extraordinary auras faced them. One was the heavenly lord of primordial beginning, and the other was the heavenly sect master. The heavenly lord of primordial beginning had an immortal Tao bone and a sharp gaze. The heavenly sect master wore a black robe and looked like a youth, but his body emitted a murderous aura that made people not dare to look at him. The heavenly lord of primordial beginning slowly said, "We can't fight with the heavenly Tao head-on. After all, the heavenly Tao is our home. However, our unfilial disciple betrayed us and controlled the power of the heavenly Tao himself. He offended his superior. I've decided to defeat the heavenly Tao in the chaotic assembly and defeat the heavenly Tao in terms of reputation before devouring it." The Taoists in the hall discussed. The chaotic assembly is a gathering of geniuses. It's indeed important. Although the heavenly Tao's foundation is strong, it has been suppressed for too long. In terms of the heavenly Tao, there aren't many primordial chaos zenith heaven golden immortals. However, we can't avoid the divine might heavenly sage if we want to touch the heavenly Tao. The divine might heavenly sage is powerful, but our grand pure sage is not bad either. The name of the divine might heavenly sage was indeed thunderous, but they had never seen the power of a divine authority general, much less the divine might heavenly sage. The heavenly sect master snorted. Divine might heavenly sage. I want to see him. The heavenly lord of primordial beginning smiled and said, "Junior, you can't speak nonsense. The divine might heavenly sage is indeed powerful. Besides, the heavenly Tao and the 3 pure sacred world will fuse together sooner or later. How can we be enemies?" The heavenly sect master glanced at him with disdain, but he did not reply. At this moment, an inappropriate voice sounded. "What's there to fight for? Do we still need to care about the heavenly Tao if we obtain the peak of the chaos?" Everyone turned around. The person who spoke was a white-robed Taoist. He had a fair face and was very young. He looked to be only 16 or 17 years old. He stood up slowly with an arrogant expression and looked down on all the Taoists present. The heavenly lord of primordial beginning chuckled. "Jiang Gongming, do you think it's so easy to fight for the top of the world? There's so much chaos that even we don't know how big the 3 pure ones are. There's no limit to the number of geniuses." Jiang Gongming smiled. "I attained the Tao at 1,000,000 years old and attained freedom at 10 million years old. I attained the Great Tao at 50 million years old. I will definitely dominate the chaotic assembly. Teacher, tell me, is there really someone in the chaos who has a higher potential than me? I've never gone out on an adventure and I have never experienced enlightenment. I've cultivated on my own." Those Taoists who didn't know Jiang Gongming were in an uproar. "Great Tao Sage!" The heavenly lord of primordial beginning shook his head. "You're indeed talented, but you lack experience. Many geniuses have appeared in the heavenly Tao recently. For example, the 3 disciples of the divine might heavenly sage are already at the freedom realm before they reach 10 million years old. Although they are affected by opportunities, their cultivation realms are true." Jiang Gongming frowned and asked in a low voice, "Who are those 3? Dao Sovereign, Zhao Xianyuan, and Jiang Yi are currently cultivating with the Grand Pure Sage's clone. Jiang Gongming frowned even more. Jiang Gongming nodded unhappily. The other Taoists also began to discuss Dao Sovereign and the other two. This made Jiang Gongming even more unhappy. The Heavenly Sect Master stared at Jiang Gongming and smiled. It was unknown what he was thinking. Third Dao Field. The expansion of the primordial world still showed no limit so far. The stars in the primordial world doubled in number after breaking through, as many as the lifespan of the origin. The Turbidine world destruction worm was still in the primordial heavenly prison. It would probably take some time. After all, it was worth 1 trillion years of lifespan. Hanju habitually checked his emails and checked his recent friends. Some were beaten, some obtained opportunities, and new maps were unlocked. Hanju discovered that more and more names of the world appeared in the emails ever since the ultimate god of punishment took over. This fellow was really wise from the looks of it. However, was the stronger the chaos, the better it was for him, a primordial fiend celestial? Would the chaos discover his son's bloodline in the future and besiege him even if he surpassed the primordial fiend celestial and his son inherited his bloodline? Hanju decided to deduce. I want to know the future of Xing Hongshuan's son. Yes, let's deduce how he dies. Hanju thought silently. Calculating the time of death was the most direct. It would be a good thing if he couldn't deduce it. 10 trillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Would he really die one day? Hanju frowned and immediately chose to continue. He entered the illusion. Hanju opened his eyes and discovered that he was standing in a palace covered in bones. There were bones of all kinds of races, like purgatory. It was ghastly and terrifying. He saw that the palace was vast. At a glance, there was a huge throne that was 10,000 feet tall 1,000,000 miles away. It was coiled with dragon bones and looked like it was cast from iron. It flickered with a cold light. This is my son? Hanju narrowed his eyes and sized up the 10,000-foot tall figure. This child was actually wearing his time Dao robe. His black hair was tied up under a golden pearl crown. He had a handsome face and his eyes were blood red. He was like an emperor who ruled all living beings as he looked forward lazily and stared indifferently in Hanju's direction. This was the first time Hanju saw his son's appearance clearly. He indeed looked like him. He was more handsome than Han Tuo, but he also had a hint of evilness. This kid had a strong killing intent. Hanju turned around and saw a burly figure walking over with a strong light on his back. His expression became strange after he looked carefully. It was the ultimate god of punishment. Figures appeared behind the ultimate god. Among them were 5 great divine punishers and dozens of great Dao divine spirits. They walked past Hanju and stared at the 10,000-foot tall figure in front of them. Hanju noticed that the great Dao divine spirits were all very nervous and they were trembling. Han Tuo clenched his fists and his face was pale, as if he was suffering in his heart. Primordial Fiend Celestial, you will die here today. Do you have anything to say before you die? The entire sky above the palace was covered in dark clouds and thunder rumbled. The 10,000-foot tall figure looked down at the great Dao divine spirits in front of him and smiled disdainfully. My good brother, are you also going to kill me? Han Tuo's expression turned even uglier. Etian cursed. You brat, you've done all sorts of evil. Your brother can tell right from wrong and won't help you. Instead of blaming him, you should blame yourself for your monstrous evil. Ha 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 ha. The 10,000-foot tall figure laughed sinisterly. Who decides what's evil? All of you? I slaughtered a chaotic domain, but that domain is only a place where cultivators gather. Those cultivators all have negative karma. Besides, have you never killed living beings by mistake? Have you not killed many? The great Tao divine spirits were silent. The ultimate god of punishment said indifferently, "We'll let bygones be bygones once the rules are set. We all have to follow the rules. Times have changed, understand? Besides, is this matter as simple as the slaughtering of a chaotic domain? You trampled on the supreme rules and caused chaos in the lives of all living beings. You stepped into the chaotic river of destiny and severed the past of countless cultivators, causing their Tao hearts to be in chaos. Do you have more sins that you need me to explain? You must die today." The 10,000-foot-tall figure stood up and said disdainfully, "You want to kill me? You think too highly of yourselves. Ultimate god of punishment, do you really think you're already the strongest in the chaos?" The ultimate god of punishment was moved. The 10,000-foot-tall figure laughed. "There are still realms above the great Tao. That's a realm that even you and Laozi can't enter. As the creator of his Tao, my father has long stepped into the Tao creator realm, and so have I. Today, you will witness the power of the Tao creator." Boom! A terrifying aura erupted and the entire palace instantly turned into dust. The ultimate god of punishment raised his hand to block, but the great Tao divine spirits behind him were destroyed one after another, leaving only Han Tuo. Han Tuo forcefully blocked, but his body couldn't withstand it and he was bathed in blood. The 10,000-foot-tall figure rose. His entire body shone with a strong light. He looked down at the ultimate god of punishment and raised his right hand, his palm facing him. The ultimate god of punishment's expression changed drastically. He discovered that he could not move. "Ultimate god of punishment, I respect you for your contributions to the chaos, so I didn't kill you. However, you overestimate yourself and actually dared to rally the divine spirits to attack. You're really courting death." The 10,000-foot-tall figure said coldly, his tone filled with killing intent. Hanju was secretly shocked. His son was a Tao creator? His aura was indeed terrifying. Humph! A cold snort suddenly sounded. The aura of the 10,000-foot-tall figure was immediately extinguished. Everything around him stopped moving. Even space stopped twisting violently. The 10,000-foot-tall figure's expression changed drastically. "Who? Primordial Fiend Celestial, you want to overturn the chaos. Your sins should be consigned to eternal damnation. Your body and soul will be destroyed. Your cultivation will be reduced to nothingness." An indifferent voice sounded. Everything in front of Hanju shattered like a mirror as soon as he finished speaking. He saw the 10,000-foot-tall figure shatter into countless small pieces and turn into dust. The illusion shattered. Hanju opened his eyes and frowned. The last to attack should be the chaotic consciousness, the formless transcendent deity, or the ninth chaos. No matter who it was, they were undoubtedly Tao creators. Of course, there was probably something else. Hanju couldn't blindly trust everything he saw. One thing was certain. His youngest son was still reckless. A half-step Tao creator dared to act recklessly. Hanju directly skipped the possibility of the father and son falling out. He chose to believe the most dangerous possibility, which was that he had lost and was suppressed by the other Tao creators. He immediately felt a sense of danger. He still had to cultivate diligently. Hanju took a deep breath. In addition, he had to educate his youngest son well and tell him not to be reckless after he was born. Hanju wouldn't deny his son because of the future, because that was only a fate in the present. It had never happened and he could still change it. Then, he continued cultivating. Time quickly passed. 40,000 years later. Turbidine World Destruction Worm successfully enslaved. The Turbidine World Destruction Worm has a favorable impression of you. Current favorability, Max. Hanju opened his eyes and teleported to the main Dao field. This mother worm was probably the will of the turbidine world destruction worm. Then, Hanju began to refine the connate restriction contained in the stone tablet. He used 100 years to refine it into his Dharma treasure. He threw the entire stone tablet into the primordial world and drew the primordial chi into it to nourish the turbidine world destruction worm. Then, he teleported to the third Dao field and continued cultivating. Hanju was still looking forward to the turbidine world destruction worm. The terrifying insect race that devoured dermic powers and thoughts was definitely a cultivator's nightmare. They were even more terrifying than the inauspicious evil. In the pure white space, there were no other colors other than white. At a glance, there was no end to it. A huge head floated quietly in one corner of this space. Many stiff corpses as tiny as sand could be seen around it. He suddenly opened his 9 eyes. His gaze was extremely cold and emotionless. The aura of time flowed out, heavy and lonely. Who is spying on me and creating my fate? The huge head muttered to itself, I can't deduce the chaos. Could it be that Pangu didn't sever the supreme karma just to resist the divine authority generals? Interesting. There are still variables in the chaos. I want to see who can rise. I'll make this chaos more interesting since I'm going to change. With that said, the eye between his eyebrows suddenly burst out and quickly disappeared into the distance. In the depths of the chaos, 2 groups of cultivators were at odds on a dilapidated continent. On one side were Ancestor Shitian, Li Daokong, Shi Dao, and the others. On the other side were Huang Zuantian and the others. Huang Zuantian had even more subordinates than Ancestor Shitian. Huang Zuantian stared at him and said, Ancestor, you should join life on account of our friendship with the heavenly Tao. I'm the orthodox lineage of Life Lord and have 1,000,000 calamity life controllers under me. You can't lead these subordinates alone. Shi Dao and Li Daokong frowned. Ancestor Shitian smiled and said, Huang Zuantian, I didn't expect the heavenly Tao to have someone like you. Your talent isn't in cultivation, but your potential is the same as that divine might heavenly sage. It's immeasurable. Huang Zuantian chuckled. Thank you for your praise, Ancestor. Now, I only want to gather the Calamity Life controllers and look forward to the future together. Although the chaos is peaceful, we can't escape our fate. We will be defeated one by one sooner or later if we don't unite. We were actually no longer chaotic life forms when we became Calamity Life controllers. We have to restrain ourselves and unite if we want to survive in the chaos. Ancestor Shitian nodded as if he agreed with Huang Zuantian, but he did not agree to the merger. The atmosphere became solemn and silent. Shi Dao thought to himself, what's going on? Why hasn't the Dark Forbidden Lord appeared? What's he doing? He suddenly couldn't see through it. He thought that the Dark Forbidden Lord and the Divine Might Heavenly Sage were the same person. The Dark Forbidden Lord first supported life and helped the Divine Might Heavenly Sage increase his reputation. Now that the Divine Might Heavenly Sage was already famous in the chaos, it was time to clean up the mess and unite the Life faction to develop into a potential force hidden in the dark. Ancestor, have you thought it through? Huang Zuantian narrowed his eyes and asked. His right hand behind his waist secretly gestured. This was the signal to prepare for battle. Ancestor Shitian took a step forward and smiled. We can submit, but shouldn't you prove your strength as the Life Lord? Upper-level methods can't convince the masses. You still have to rely on mystical powers if you want to lead the Life faction to prosperity. Huang Zuantian smiled and said, then please enlighten me, Ancestor. His eyes emitted a cold light. Ancestor Shitian suddenly sensed danger. For some reason, he thought of Hanju's Heaven-Earth mystic yellow world-piercing sword finger. This kid was indeed not simple. Time passed. 100,000 years passed. Han Qing'er was still meditating and cultivating under the old tree. Now, her cultivation level had already reached the primordial chaos zenith heaven golden immortal realm. She had attained the Tao in hundreds of thousands of years. This breakthrough speed was already exaggerated. Qing'er had just finished cultivating and was stretching. She glanced at her daughter and couldn't help but ask, "Qing'er, aren't you tired?" In any case, Qing'er couldn't continue cultivating. She would stop to rest every once in a while. Qing'er blinked and was stunned for a moment before understanding. She was mocking her cultivation talent. Qing'er slapped Han Qing'er's back, but he did not use much strength, afraid that it would affect her cultivation. She sighed as she looked at Han Qing'er's side profile. Be it sons or daughters, they all yearn to cultivate. She didn't understand it in the past, but now she did, because it was passed down from their father. Hanju's cultivation was even more exaggerated. He had been in seclusion for millions of years. Her scalp would tingle every time she thought of it. Footsteps sounded at this moment. Hanju walked over. Qing'er stood up in surprise upon seeing him. "Husband, why are you here?" Han Qing'er also opened her eyes. She stood up and moved in front of him. "Father, I want to spar with you." The living beings not far away also opened their eyes. They only looked a few years older after so many years. Hanju smiled and said, "I came out to see you." He glanced at Han Qing'er and said, "You're not qualified to spar with me." Han Qing'er was not convinced. "Impossible. I'm very strong now. Those disciples are not my match. So, only you can fight me. How about this? I'll let Jiangjuesher fight you." "No," Han Qing'er rejected firmly. Han Qing'er said that next chapter will be a fake and will be replaced with real chapter after a few hours, so don't panic. She wasn't stupid. Jiangjuesher was a freedom sage. The terrifying feeling he gave her back then was still vivid in her mind. Moreover, Jiangjuesher was only a disciple. He wouldn't hold back against her. However, it was impossible for her father to hurt her. Hanju smiled and used the dark nightmare to pull Han Qing'er into the dream. The dream was the chaotic void. Han Qing'er looked around in surprise. She thought that her father had brought her to the void and did not realize that this was only a dream. Fiend celestial Dharma idols condensed above his head. Every one of them was 1,000,000 feet tall. There were 100 of them. All of them leaned forward and looked down at Han Qing'er. Han Qing'er was dumbfounded. She had never seen such a scene. She looked up and saw that she was surrounded. She trembled in fear. And she suddenly thought of this word. Back when she was traveling in the immortal world, she had seen many children who liked to squat and play with the ants on the ground. They surrounded the ants. This situation was identical. Hanju said expressionlessly, "I'll let you see my power since you insist on fighting me. What right do I have to shock the chaos? Watch carefully." The heavenly constellation Fiend Celestial roared angrily, scaring Han Qing'er so much that she trembled. She subconsciously wanted to escape, but she was imprisoned by a terrifying force and could not move. Even her soul couldn't leave her body. Impossible! Han Qing'er's face was pale. She could only watch as the heavenly constellation Fiend Celestial punched. The killing intent was real. Her father was not joking with her. Boom! The heavenly constellation Fiend Celestial punched out, and Han Qing'er's body and soul were destroyed. Han Qing'er opened her eyes and gasped. Her head was covered in a cold sweat and she looked terrified. Qing'er asked with concern, "What's wrong?" The dream was too fast. Hanju chatted with her as he fought, so she didn't notice that Han Qing'er was pulled into the dream by her father. Hanju asked with a faint smile, are we still going to fight? Han Qinger shook her head frantically. Qingwaner's expression darkened as she looked at Hanju upon seeing her so frightened. Hanju coughed. It's nothing. I just fought with her in my dream and didn't hurt her. She's just shocked. Sigh, how dare she challenge me with this mentality? She still wants to surpass her big brother? Han Qinger blushed, but she couldn't help but shiver when she thought of the scene just now. How terrifying. So her father was so terrifying when he was serious. No wonder the sages in the Universal Hall were so respectful to him. Had they been beaten like this in the past?